Y'all ready?
Welcome, everyone, to this edition of Fish Stripes Live. Here at Fish Stripes Live, we're going to be talking about the Marlins versus the Washington Nationals series. But before that, let me introduce you to your panel and a very special guest. I'm Daniel. I will be hosting. We have the usual suspects in Isaac, Noah, Eli, Brent, and joining us here today from Just Baseball, Aram Layton. Aram, it's great to have you back on.
Always great to be here, guys. It's been too long, so I'm excited to make up for lost time.
Awesome. The first thing I want to talk about was this Cardinal series that just happened a few days ago. I kind of want to go past those first two games, just forget those even happened, and talk about that Sandy masterclass, just one of the best pitch performances in all of baseball, I would say, this entire season. Just incredible. And even how they even got to that point with a home run by a very unexpected player for the Marlins. We'll start with Aram. Aram, what did you see from that game, especially from Sandy, and how would you describe his season overall?
Well, in regards to the home run, I'd say if you looked at Spotrac, it would be an expected result.
Yes.
But on the Sandy front, no, I mean, it's been incredible to see. And I know like Isaac and Noah and Eli can speak to it, but especially the guys that are, at the games. And, one of the things that stood out to me was just how much Sandy really truly means what he says when he says he wants to go 130 pitches. Like, this guy really needs to be dragged off the mound. And I think what stood out to me above all with the performance, and you can talk about Don Mattingly and all of those things, but in that moment, Don trusted his ace and it worked. And I'm not saying that overshadows everything else. And that moment in a vacuum was awesome, right? Sandy, the second the double plays turned, who does he point to? His manager. Who does his manager point back to? His ace. And like, that was a really cool moment. Aside from any of the side conversations we're having, that was super cool. And it's cool to see, Sandy building that trust and really proving that he deserves whatever opportunity he gets to talk really the manager off the mound. And I think he has the right to decide basically when he comes out of a game now.
Yeah, Isaac, what did you see from Sandy at that moment when he was talking to Donnie, and then he got into a little bit of a jam? I believe, did he have runners on the corner before that double play?
Yeah, that ninth inning, then he got the first out fairly easily, and then he walked a batter, and then he gave him a base hit up the middle. And at that point, okay, I know Donnie's going to come out, but I wasn't certain that he was going to take him out. It hasn't been many times that Donnie comes out to the mound and takes out his starting pitcher. So that was one of the most hype moments of the season. Was a mound visit. It was really an awesome moment. I'm sitting there, I'm watching, like, don't take him out, don't take him out. JP and Sevilla on the call. I rewatched the game later. He was all excited. Everyone was nervous that he was going to take him out. He didn't, and he did what he does best, induce a double play to end the game. What a moment. And yeah, that was just the most impressive part to me was just that his defense behind him did not help him at all. That entire game, all 3 runs, you could argue that it could have been unearned. Throws going to the wrong places. Jesus Sanchez with a really bad-looking field opportunity there. We've seen that before. And Sandy in his 119th pitch, going 99 miles an hour, he just never ceases to amaze me, and it really is fantastic. It's really what we're seeing with him.
Yeah, and usually in these types of seasons when a player is having just a Cy Young caliber this season, people usually go to moments that go to their Cy Young award and really showcase that. This is really Sandy's Cy Young moment, a complete game. Donnie coming to the mound and in a little rough situation at St. Louis where he was traded from. So a really big moment overall from Sandy. And before that, like Aram mentioned, Avi Garcia hitting that home run to give the Marlins the lead was just incredible. Eli, what do you see from Avi Garcia at that moment?
Yeah. Well, he was earlier this month. It looked like he was shaking out of his season-long slump for some of June. Like there was just this steady pace where he was at least getting the ball in the air a little bit more. He wasn't chasing out of the zone as ridiculously as he was in April and May. And then very quietly, the last week, he was back to being a liability again. He only had, I think, he was probably 2 for his last 20 entering that home run with like probably striking out in half of those plate appearances. And even in this series against the Cardinals, he was not having a good series prior to this particular moment. So to say he was expected, I really can't. I was very surprised that it happened against, of all people, you need to highlight Ryan Helsley being one of the most dominant relievers in baseball this year up until that point. In that inning, you could see it even in his other matchups. Somebody pointed out to me that it was overlooked how terrible Aggie looked striking out against Helsley right before that. He swung at this breaking ball that was probably 3 or 4 feet in front of the plate, and that's how nasty this guy's stuff is. And yet, first pitch swinging to dead center field, not even a cheap home run. I mean, one that went well over 400 feet. That was great for him. It was a great moment for him. I'm sure we're going to get into Jorge Soler in a little bit. One difference, even though Soler has been the better player overall this year, he's been like somewhat closer to expectations. Like he hasn't had those moments. You look through his entire game logs this year, and there have been very few games where he has really changed the game in any significant moment, in any high leverage situation. Yeah. And so thankfully Garcia has at least one of those where he single-handedly really did flip that game around.
He's had 2, actually. If you remember that a couple games ago, he legged out that break the double play.
Well, come on. We're fishing. We're fishing there, Noah. Let's go.
I'm saying, but over the last few weeks, he's really upped his game and has been pushing to try and flip games. That was his biggest swing as a Marlin, without question. Sandy just is incredible. When Donnie's all of a sudden coming out of the dugout, I was listening to the radio, and Glenn's like, "Oh no." And he's like, is he really going to pull him? And Gabby is saying, I don't think he hasn't pointed to the bullpen. I don't think he's going to pull him. And Glenn says, we've seen this movie before. We don't like how it ends, but this time he's leaving him out there. And I was fist pumping the air because you just knew Sandy was going to finish it. There was no question. Sandy was going to get that last out.
Noah, what was the quote that you tweeted out from Glenn that if he needs to stay in this game, if not, it's a shame?
So at the end of the 8th inning, it'll be a complete game, and it'll be a complete shame if Marlins don't get a few runs for Sandy. Because it would have ended with an 8-inning complete game.
Yeah. It's amazing.
I wanted to say something about Sandy. It's just incredible how good he's been all year. He's literally the prototypical ace coming out every 5th day. And his last outing really defined that. You know, you drop the first 2 games to the Cardinals, and you're looking for your ace to pick you up, go deep into the game. And he ends up throwing a complete game, begging for the ball at the end. And I put something out on Twitter talking about Sandy's value. And obviously, I think he's going to Cy Young, and I said that I don't think he'll win MVP, but I think he's the most valuable player in baseball, just what he brings to the team, how he gives our bullpen guys rest, and just continues to just shove with quality outing after quality outing every day.
Yeah. Before we change to the next topic, I want to poll everyone here really quick, ask really 2 quick questions. Hands up, is Sandy the Cy Young right now for the NL?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. He said, "Raise your hands, guys."
Oh, I'm sorry.
And is he also will Brian Stickner put him as the NL starter? Is that another you see?
So, I'm a little nervous that I think it's Tony Gonsolin is throwing really well for the Dodgers, and it's going to be in LA. So that's the only thing that'll be preventing Sandy from starting that game.
I think he deserves it, but
he deserves it. But I think they might go with the hometown guy.
It's such a massive gap in innings pitched between Sandy and Gonsolin.
That's what I said.
It's like 40 innings difference between those two. Incredible.
Sandy Sandy's almost perfectly lined up to
Yeah.
pitch that game. He, as of right now, he is perfectly lined up. I think it'd be 1 day short rest, but it'd be 1 inning that he'd throw or 2 innings. So it's got to be him.
He could still pitch the next day if he pitched a complete game of the day before. It's Sandy.
Yeah, well, to be clear, anybody that is lined up to pitch on the Sunday before the All-Star game, they make you ineligible to pitch in the All-Star game. I'm not looking that far ahead to see whether that applies to Sandy or not, but just a note about that.
I want to change topics really quick because Eli did mention up about Jorge Soler. Before that game, I believe at the beginning of the game, they had a really quick lineup order. And the Cardinals manager, Marmal, came in and was discussing that because they took out, I believe, Jorge Soler was supposed to be third, and then Jeezy was there at third. So it was a really confusion because it was just so close. Turned out Jorge Soler is now in a 10-day IL. What do you guys think this impacts the Marlins, maybe short term now with Jorge Soler gone and really a big bat that they don't have?
I have a question. Does this team have a chiropractor? Because it's back-to-back guys on the IL with back issues. And Andy went down with a back issue. It seems that every other day it's another guy with back issues. What's going on here? Are the chairs in the clubhouse not good? Like, what is the dugout like rail not good enough? What's going on with guys' backs?
Sandy's back's got to be hurting too.
He's carrying the entire team. It's concerning to me. That
to answer your question, Daniel, that was a strange situation. I wasn't watching where I was listening to the broadcast, so I was very confused because there's no, even Jordan McPherson and Christina mentioned that no announcement had been, nothing was announced in the press box, but luckily, the Marlins radio team did tweet out that Jorge Soler was a late scratch with lower back discomfort. And yeah, Noah's got a point. It's a little peculiar that all three of these, regulars are going down with the same injury, essentially. So that's going to be tough. But fear no more. Help is on the way in the form of Billy Hamilton here tonight at National
Joey
Park.
Forearms.
And Joey Forearms was reinstated from the IL. That's a big one. I thought that they were just going to simply, use him as a corresponding move. It'd be the easiest move for them. And I thought, and Eli, we talked about that on Filter today. That wouldn't be the most competitive move. Maybe you see a Gerard, he was on the taxi squad. Maybe you see a Blade just add another lefty bat in there with, you missing Jazz. But no, that's not what they did. They DFA'd Eric Gonzalez and Billy Hamilton is here.
I presume Billy is probably not going to play much at all, right? Like, I think that's the reason why. I guess because if you're calling up Gerard and he's not playing, it's kind of frustrating of a situation for him because you want him to keep getting his ABs and you want him to keep, doing what he's doing. Where I'm curious to see how the lineup shakes out. But with Wendell back, BA back, and now Birdie still doing what he's doing, I'd be fine with BA in the corner. I'd be fine with Birdie in a corner. I don't care. And Wendell in the infield. That's the only reason I can justify it. I mean, I'm pretty sure Billy Hamilton has a 25 WRC plus in AAA. So, you're not getting anything there. He can, fill in late game and be in the outfield. But I think it's more just he's literally, and I hate to dehumanize him like this, but he's just a body right now. And I really think that's all he is, even though it's frustrating to see them, bring up guys like Billy Hamilton. I think this is a little bit different than, Joe Panic getting 200 plate appearances or some of the other situations we've seen.
I think, Eli, you said it perfectly on your tweet, saying that he would have been like a decent depth piece on the bench for a fully healthy Marlins offense, lineup, with Soler and Jazz and Wendell, everyone in there. He would be a decent defensive replacement. But no, they're using him in this situation where I think it's just a little redundant when you already have Luke Williams on the bench. At least they DFA'd Eric Gonzalez. But to me, it's just weird with DLC still up there on the bench. You think he was your center field defensive replacement? It's just a little. It's mind-boggling to me a little bit.
Let me get the depth chart up here so that people can conceptualize what is going on at this particular moment. Like, it's so. I just feel with Jazz and Soler out, those are two of the few guys on this team that have been true everyday players when healthy. Like, I don't know if people notice, but Soler leads the team in games started this year. He's been playing more than anybody, even while dealing with a back injury on and off for a good portion of the year. With almost everybody else, there's just not very many true everyday players or guys that should be true everyday players. I think Miguel Rojas and especially Jesus Aguilar, for whatever reason, they have been the Aguilar one. I cannot for the life of me understand why he continues to be like an automatic in the middle of the lineup every single game. And one thing in particular about Aggie this year is that he's not hitting lefties this year. I know Aram has been all over this about how the Marlins are not producing against lefties whatsoever. And this goes back to when you're talking about calling up a real prospect, somebody like Gerard again, the way for him to get playing time. It's not like super simple, but I think based on this version of the roster, there is pretty close to everyday playing time there. If you take quite a bit out of Aggie, especially against lefties, if on certain days, all of a sudden the DH spot is even more open than it used to be because Soler used to be there occasionally. There's going to be some days when Avi goes to DH, opening time in right field. And with these other guys, we know Birdie has been playing great and they want to get him into the lineup as much as possible, maybe not literally every single day. And again, with Jazz out, all of a sudden you could get there's more playing time to go around in the infield than there used to be for Birdie and for BA and for Wendell. I feel like there's just a way to handle this with Brian De La Cruz as well. It's hard for me to understand why he and Billy Hamilton are up at the same time, because Billy Hamilton at this point, I feel like he's going into that role. You look back early in the year, DLC, he was barely getting playing time based on the construction of the roster. And the one thing, one of the things they were hoping for with him was being a good defender at several different positions at every outfield spot. And that has been a disappointment in that regard. Yeah. So based on how this is going, I don't buy this excuse that you can't find playing time for a real prospect right now. I think whether it was Gerard, whether it was one of the non-40-man guys at AAA that we really like, that's what I'd like to see. And I think it's going to cost them some games if they don't go in that direction.
Well, we've seen that that lack of willingness to shake the lineup up and to really bench a vet. I mean, that's something that I know like Mattingly to his core is always going to do, right? He's always going to give those vets run time until they literally run it into the ground. And that's one of the frustrating things because the Marlins are the worst team in baseball against left-handed pitching. As you've said, I've hammered that point home quite a bit, Eli. But like the craziest part about it is that you have an internal option who is probably one of the best southpaw mashers in the minor leagues, upper minors this year in Gerard Encarnacion with an 1135 OPS against lefties this season. Like that is your easy internal option. And you talk about not only is Aguilar struggling, but he's struggling against lefties. It's like a twofold upgrade in that regard. And it's very surprising to me that they wouldn't try that internal option. Even further, Peyton Burdick, like I know he's been inconsistent, but he's been pretty consistent against lefties over the last couple of years. And you know, at the very least, you're going to get a guy that's going to get on base and play good defense and presumably hit lefties. I think for the Marlins, the best way to maximize a crappy situation is by kind of taking a page out of the Giants book and platooning. And I think they've got some platoon options that don't have that much more to prove in the upper minors. I think they're hoping they're going to magically prove that they're everyday guys, but I think a lot of these guys could be very solid platoon pieces, which isn't a bad thing. Look at the Giants maximizing those kinds of players.
Yeah, and the unfortunate thing is that they had no problem limiting the at-bats. I mentioned this on Twitter. They had no problem limiting Brian Anderson's at-bats and Joey Wendell's at-bats, or putting them in a platoon role and make it a roll-outs. Why won't they do the same thing with one of their most, higher upside offensive prospects in base, in their system? So there's so many reasons why it makes sense to me, but here we are.
Yeah, just overall, not really looking good there for Miami. And also for Billy Hamilton, also pretty young, 31. I was suspecting him to be somewhere closer to 35, 34. Yeah. He's been on so many teams since he last played on the Reds. Another big news that happened. Oh, we literally
just to take a look at this Billy Hamilton's career sets.
No, I forgot about his
67 OPS plus in his career. But if you go by Fangraphs, like he's produced like 12 WAR in his career just on the defense and the base running alone. Like his career value overall is like right up there with Avi Garcia.
Whoa, hello.
He just does it a very, very different way than. And at this point, it's fair to question what he has left in the tank because he was not performing at AAA. I don't even know who he was released by before the Marlins picked him up, but. He was just there for them to pick up for free a few weeks ago.
Mariners, right?
By the way, those blue Mariners uniforms are awesome.
And with that note, we'll also go to the other big news that happened to Miami. the last few days, and that is they did part ways with VP of Player Development and Scouting, Gary Denbo. One of the biggest news stories for Miami over the last couple of days. We talked over this extensively on the official shows, Big Fish, Small Pod. Aram, I see you chomping at the bits. What do you think about this? Because the Marlins farm system has been very hit or miss. You have pitching up here, and then you have hitting down here, and I don't know.
It's pitch or miss.
Yeah. I mean, I think the recent track record kind of speaks for itself. But most importantly, I just think it's nice to have clarity in the front office and not, I want to see Kim Ng in a position where we can really say that this is Kim Ng and not, whose decision was this and whose person was this and whose move was that. And we hear reports coming from different areas about who, axed negotiations deep into certain situations and trade talks or whatever it may be. Like, I want to see a little bit more of just a structure in the front office. And Gary Denbo, once Jeter left, became a lame duck. I thought he was going to finish out the contract. I think this was the last year of his deal. I know Craig Mish touched on it a little bit more, but I'm excited to just see a new situation from top to bottom. I think Denbo is a little bit archaic with the way that he approached player development. And, I think that we're going to hopefully see a little bit of a different approach to that kind of thing. So, it might not get better. Who knows? But at least there is something different and they're taking a different chance and a different route. And I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like.
Yeah. Eli, I think we talked about this in our small pod. Just what do you think the Marlins' plan is now that Denbo is gone? How do you think they're going to fill that vacant role at the moment?
Yeah, I think I've hammered this into the ground at this point on the small pod, and then on Unfiltered that's coming out tomorrow. We got into this even more. This is, I think, one other thing I'd like to see play out probably at the end of the year is who else in this front office hierarchy also departs or gets fired. I know now Denbo may be kind of an exception to that. Like, he's a uniquely prickly personality in this situation, and he probably at times earlier in this rebuild had more influence than some of the other parts of this development system. So maybe it's everybody else is sticking around. Maybe everybody else is, well, to use a Mish term, has more kumbaya with Kim Ng than Denbo does. For whatever reason, they just didn't see eye to eye, or they weren't aligned on certain things. So I think it's still a wait and see as to who is still in this organization to be a candidate for an internal promotion versus whether they actually look outside the organization for somebody new to not just like manage the minor leagues, but what Denbo did from the very beginning is just install certain values that he had. And some of them were very cliche values about being competitive and respecting other people, like really basic things that probably didn't need to be emphasized that much. But he had a big influence, of course, on what everything this team did. And it's whoever fills that shoes. It is a very important position. One other thing I've just been hammering home is just how much pressure he is under and whoever fills the shoes is under when you are running player development for an organization that doesn't spend at the major league level much at all. Like, if you're a team that is going to be a small market team and operate that way, putting so much pressure on your own prospects to succeed at a rate that's higher than you expect across the league, it's a tough position. It's not an easy job. So,
and you could argue doesn't spend as much on development as well.
Right.
So you got to do more with less.
Right. The one thing we have seen them spend on was the Dominican Academy that finally opened for business. And so they have almost as many players under contract as any organization to field those two teams in the DR. That's a step that certainly does help. But in terms of the organization overall, it's trying to do a lot with less. And I wish you could feel confident in the next person having more success, but can't guarantee that.
I will say, I think your next in line, I think, is at this point DJ Svilik. I think he might be you're just be on the lookout for him to have a much bigger role in the front office of this team. That's all I got.
So I have a question. Who do you think it is exactly that let Gary Denbo go? Is it Kim Ng that gives him the call? Is it Bruce Sherman that gives him the call? I was just a little curious about that. It might be a stupid question.
Conference call.
I would think it was Kim Eng.
Ultimately, is it Kim Eng's call to do that?
She is superior to him,
Right.
so I believe it was it was her.
Wow.
That'd be my
GM does
best
the
guess.
hiring and firing unless it's the GM being fired.
Right. Or unless it's Derek Jeter as the CEO.
Maybe in certain cases, ownership could be doing that, but I don't think Bruce Sherman is on that side of the ownership.
Exactly.
On the meddling side, that actually.
That's why I was confused. I was like, no way, Bruce Sherman said, you know what? I don't like Gary Denbo's, development.
Yeah, that's a Loria move.
Right. That's like Loria firing Bindfest. That's like a situation like that. All right.
Yeah, and also I really wanted to bring up here from the chat. It says the Marlins need to have player development like the Rays, and I feel like that's something that the Marlins are always compared to the Rays. Just how is it that the Marlins can even reach a step like that and even get a fraction of how the Rays are? Because just hitting wise for Miami, we're seeing guys not really perform to where they need to be. The one player that really comes to mind is JJ Bleday. You see other guys just already in the majors now at the same draft class that they were. Just how did the Marlins even reach to that point in the Rays and really flip the script on hitting wise for their developmental hitters?
I think the major difference between the Rays and the Marlins is the Rays call their guys up.
Gotta have guys
That's-
to call up.
They have. You beat me to it. They have guys to call up that are killing.
So, how many guys do we have chomping at the bit to be called up? JJ Bleday, Rory Encarnacion,
no,
you guys you
Bleday's
keep
hitting-
mentioning.
No.
So then you're lying to yourself then
No, it's a
about wanting
difference
to have them up at the major league level.
It's a difference about needing them out of necessity, like having them out of necessity, or saying that they're ready and they're chomping at the bits at AAA. Bleday's hitting 200. No. Gerard maybe is that one guy. But no. It's not even close. The guys that they call up are killing it in AA and AAA. I'm sure Aram can agree.
It's the like identification, I think, is the big thing. Like something that the Rays do a really good job of is maximizing value, whether it's, trading a guy before they have to add him to the 40-man or trading, certain, I mean, there's times where it blows back on them too. I know, I think we're very quick to celebrate the Rays where even they've made some mistakes as well. I mean, they traded Joe Ryan for a rental Nelson Cruz. Like we've seen them make mistakes, but the point is they accumulate a ton of assets because they are really good. I don't know how they do it. If we knew, then everybody would be copycatting them, but they are really good at maximizing value, but also identifying prospects that other teams don't even know that they have, right? Like that's why everybody thought, oh no, Cameron Meisner, right? The Rays picked him out of the pile and they know that he's got something that maybe the Marlins don't even realize. He hasn't been great, and it doesn't always pan out that way. But you look at some of the other deals that they've made to go get a Curtis Mead, and Curtis Mead is one of the best offensive prospects in baseball right now. They got him for nothing. They swapped like a quadruple A pitcher for him. They're always looking around and looking for players in other organizations that are undervalued, or that, the organization who currently owns the rights to that player might not really know how good they are. And they're just good at that. I don't think you can just duplicate what other teams do. I think you've just got to be good at what you're good at and acknowledge your weaknesses. And I think through the last couple of years, the Marlins have not really acknowledged their weaknesses. They haven't really catered to their strengths, and they keep trying to act like a team that's good at R&D when it comes to pitching and hitting, where they should be leaning into the pitching more and acknowledging that they might not be that great at identifying offensive prospects and trying to find those in other ways, and maybe trying to find those guys that are already developed far along the way and stop going for the toolsy guys that you can't develop. I think you got to acknowledge your weaknesses and go from there. And the Rays are good at playing to their strengths, and they identify players that fit their mold. Marlins don't really do that. They don't have an identity.
I could have said it better myself. And with that, we're going to go quick into a Fish Stripes break. And then after this break, we're going to be talking about lineups and getting into this Washington National Series. So stay tuned.
Yes, coming up tomorrow here on our YouTube channel and podcast feed, Fish Stripes Unfiltered interview with Troy Johnston of AA Pensacola. So here's a little taste of that conversation.
With baseball being a summer sport, have your parents been able to come out and watch you play a good amount, or not?
It's actually funny. They're actually here right now watching. They're coming in their vacation. It kind of sucks for them. It's raining the whole time here in Pensacola. Yeah. I keep talking about how great the beach is and the atmosphere, but it's kind of raining and whatnot. But no, my parents they usually come once or twice a year. I am from the state of Washington, so coming all the way across the country is a little bit of a long travel. But yeah, my parents, they watch just about every game, follow Fish Stripes on Twitter. They know everything that's going on there. And so, but yeah, they get to come out when they're able to.
Bro, I'm wearing the same shirt, man. You like to think I don't do laundry, man.
Yeah, not a particularly spicy clip. I just like the part that he plugged Fish Stripes. And that his parents follow along. Yeah,
of all the questions, that was the question we clipped for this.
I mean, that's another guy really quick about Troy Johnson, who's also having a really good year. He's hitting close to 300, having an OPS of 812. That's another guy that the Marlins are have kind of sneakily in there who's having a really good year for the Yahoos. But after that, I want to talk about now. Well, we all came here to talk about the Washington Nationals going up against the Miami Marlins. And the pitching matchup tonight is a really interesting one. We have Trevor Rogers going up against, it seems like the player that pitches every time they face up against each other. Josiah Gray made his debut against Miami. It seems like every start he has is against the Marlins. We'll start with Brent. Brent, what are you seeing from this series, especially this first game between Trev and Josiah?
Well, Nationals, there's not, without a doubt, they're a lower class team, talent-wise. And we just got off that series against the Cardinals, who are a very good team. But going in today's game, I really think Rogers is going to have a good game. I mean, I feel like he's been better lately, still walking people, but his stuff has been sharper. He looks good. I think he's going to impress people with the outing he has tonight. And I just feel like we got to put runs on the board. Consistent hitting. We got shut out one game last series where we had 8 hits. We just got to string those hits together. One big inning, 2 big innings, score a couple runs. And I feel like we should take a couple this series.
Yeah, and always with the Nationals, the one guy you have to single out just got offered a gigantic contract by Washington. That's Juan Soto, who's not having really his type of year, who's not really hitting as well. Only 2.24 average. Isaac, when you're going up against Soto, even though he's not having the best of years, you still have to just focus on a guy like that because he might not have the best of years, but he can always go off.
There's no one with a better, pitch recognition and just knows how to hit better than Juan Soto, in my opinion. And something you mentioned about Josiah Gray, the Marlins are the team that he's faced the most in his career. I know he faced the Marlins last year on Edward Cabrera's debut, and he's faced them, I think, three times this season. So he does have some familiarity with this ball club. But to mention Juan Soto, the only guy that I think can consistently get him out with ease is Sandy Alcantara. Sandy mentioned to us last time that he knows how to get him out, and it takes some cojones to mention that about the best hitter in baseball. So, but with Trevor Rogers, I think Trevor's had some struggles with Juan. I haven't looked into the numbers yet, but I know Juan is going to draw at least 2 walks tonight against a sort of quote unquote regressed Trevor Rogers. But yeah, Juan, you always got to be careful with him. He doesn't have as much protection. Josh Bell is having a really good year. I like him for that team. He's going to make some contender a lot better in August. But yeah, Juan Soto, even with the lack of protection he has in that lineup, he's always a threat.
Yeah, and
I should shout out the Nats are kind of winning some games lately. I don't know if you've noticed that. They
Don't
are
say that.
in the last 6-3 in their last 9 games, and 2 of the losses are 1-run losses. So they, over a week and a half stretch, the last 3+ series this is their hottest stretch of the season for a team that's 20 games under 500. Like, they were heading towards one of the worst seasons in franchise history, and now maybe digging out of that just a tiny bit with some help from the lineup is a little deeper than it was earlier in the year. I think in a lot of these previous matchups, Nelson Cruz looked washed up when these teams previously met a couple times early in the year. He also missed some games that they played between these 2 teams earlier on, so he helps. I think Lane Thomas got off to an awful start, and now he's looking more respectable enough, at least to fake it as a leadoff hitter for them. Besides that, I'm not gonna pretend this is a good team whatsoever. It's just one that is they might be facing the Marlins it's just a really inconvenient time to be running into the Nationals on the road when they are playing relatively well over
especially
a small
on the 4th of July. It's gonna be tough.
That 11:05 a.m. game is brutal.
Yeah, well, this whole weekend they should be getting pretty decent crowds, and I imagine crowds will be favoring the Nats more than the Marlins for what it's worth. That's more of a minor league baseball thing, the 4th of July weekend to be a huge turnout, but I think it moves the needle a little bit in the majors too. Just about everybody.
No, I think 100% that 4th of July morning game is going to be a sellout for the Nationals.
Oh, yeah.
It's because that always the Nationals have it draw a humongous crowd with their morning.
And what a pitching matchup they're gonna get: Braxton Garrett against Patrick Corbin. So, what a matchup there.
Hey, don't disrespect Braxton Garrett like
brought
that.
up Harold Ramirez.
I know this comment is completely off topic, but anybody that brings up Harold automatically gets on screen. Yeah, he hit almost 400 over the month of June, and the season overall, he's doing just fine at Tampa Bay.
We are always on Harold watch.
One question I'd like to, ask our guest here is because I'm really intrigued by Josiah Gray. I always have. I even got him on my fantasy team. He's just one of the better breaking balls in all of Major League Baseball, and he just hasn't been able to get it going. So I wanted to ask you about: is he good? And number 2 is what's wrong with Trevor Rogers? I think that's something that I'd like to take on.
Yeah, well, so Josiah Gray, it's funny. I actually just spent a little bit of time on him, and I was going to write something up for him on justbaseball.com, but then I was like, let me wait for the next start because every time I write about a dude, he gets shelled. So I'm waiting for this start. I assume he's going to pitch well tonight. But Josiah,
today.
The breaking ball is unbelievable, like you said.
Right.
The curveball and the slider tend to like blend together a little bit, and it would give him kind of really only 2 looks because the changeup he barely uses. So it was fastball and a curveball that can become, or a breaking ball that can become redundant because the slider and curve would blend together. Now he's separated that pitch a lot more. The curveball has more depth. The slider is more sharp. And now he's got 3 different pitches. The changeup, he's starting to mix in a little bit more, but the overall command is good. And I think he's really good. If you take a look at his last 5 starts, he's been spectacular. I think it's going to be tough for the Marlins tonight. I think it is. And I know it'll be easy to be like, the Marlins are doing that thing where they don't hit again. But I really think Josiah Gray is a heck of a pitcher, man. And there's a reason why the Nationals, were willing to take him as one of the main pieces and that return for Trey Turner and Max Scherzer. And I think he's going to be a pain in the butt for the Marlins for the next 5+ years. But on Trevor Rogers, I think he's looked better. I really do. It went bad for him last outing a little bit. He was showing signs of life the outing before that, but I really do think the stuff has gotten better. Like what was said before, the fastball has ticked up a little bit. The command's been a little bit better. He's been a bit more confident with attacking hitters, but it's really just been a lack of command. And it seems like his mechanics are out of whack. It seems like he's out of sync and there's just not a lot of confidence. A lot more hitters counts. And when you can cheat for the fastball, you can catch up to it. But when Rogers has you guessing between fastball and changeup, you're in trouble. And that's what he did all last year. And he hasn't been able to do that much this year. I think he can bounce back tonight, but we'll see. If he can't bounce back tonight, I don't know when he's going to bounce back.
Yeah, regarding the Josiah Gray stats that Daniel wanted, so this is going to be his 28th start in his career and his 6th against the Marlins. So 20-something% of his career starts coming against the same team, the way that it is lined up. And what stood out to me when looking it up is that he just hasn't had any really bad starts in those previous samples. Like all of them, 5+ innings, and some of them, none of them with more than 4 runs allowed. Like even when he's shaky, he's not bad against them in his history, but not yet won any dominant outings from him. So we'll see. Maybe this is the night where he really steps up.
The start that I was alluding to that made me ask Arm that question was that game that I was talking about in last season against Edward Cabrera, where that curveball looked the best that I've ever seen it. He struck out 8 Marlins in 6 innings. He got the win. He only gave up 2 earned runs. I think that has to be the best start he's had against the Marlins in his career because he looked phenomenal. He was making. It's not that difficult. Granted, a late 2021 Marlins lineup, it's not that hard to make him look bad, but he really did easily.
Yeah, and I also want to really go back onto this Marlins lineup, and one player I really wanted to focus on, league leader in steals, Mr. John Birdie, leading off from Miami. I could see Noah already looking at this, waiting to talk. Noah, you love Birdie just as much as you love DLC. Just how important has he been for Miami, especially the way this season has gone?
His sound got disconnected, didn't it?
Oh, I thought you did.
No, I have a mute button here that I had clicked mute on. He's just so much fun to watch. He gets on base and he's automatically at second or third. He puts pressure on the pitchers and He makes them forget about the hitter at the plate, which is huge. With Joey Wendell right behind him, I think the beginning of this game could get interesting very fast, or it could be another dud. You never know. I'd like to see when they flip the lineup card over and Brian Anderson, Miguel Rojas, and maybe Jacob Stallings could get on base for Birdie again. It's this whole lineup you can go through, and there's places where you can start rallies, and I like it.
The Marlins, I'm not sure if Birdie yet qualifies for the batting title. He's only played in 46 games, but he is on pace to finish with almost 50 steals, which is just spectacular, and the amount of games that he's played and the rate at which he steals them, 21 consecutive ones, is just, he's amazing. Wow.
You can be the steals leader even if you're not a qualified batter.
Right. No, I know that. I mean that
it's
just even more impressive that he's not even.
Because he's not even that close due to the time that he missed due to COVID,
right.
And obviously early in the year when he wasn't starting. But if he stays off the IL the rest of the way, he'll probably qualify before the end of the year and make up for lost time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Another player I really want to touch upon, batting ninth right now, Jacob Stallings, and just what is going on there? Because when I look at this lineup and saw Jacob Stallings, I really wanted to I wasn't sure because I was thinking Fortes is having even better of a year compared to Stallings. Aram, just what do you think is going on with Jacob Stallings, and would you have put Nick Fortes above Stallings in this situation and going forward the rest of the year?
Yeah, man, it's tough. I mean, Stallings is a vet, and with a struggling pitcher like Trevor Rogers, I know Stallings by like a lot of framing metrics and whatever hasn't been great this year, but I still think there's a little bit more trust with the Stallings behind the dish. I'm cool with Stallings against with Rogers on the mound. I would like a struggling pitcher to have a vet behind the dish, whereas Fortes, he's done great, but maybe that's not the situation you want him in as much. But I do think that it's fair to say, and I think the Marlins do need to start looking at, possibly giving Fortes 3 starts a week and eating into Stallings, playing time a little bit. I don't know if it's an equal split, because at the end of the day, you gave up a decent amount for Stallings, and you want to see him get going. It's still relatively early in the season, but I mean, especially when he's not giving you the value defensively, I would really look at starting to give Fortes a little bit more run. But I think there's a very high % chance that Fortes starts playing more, and he also slows down a little bit. I mean, there's not much reason to believe that Nick Fortes can be a starting caliber catcher for the duration of a big league season. I love what we've seen so far; it's super exciting. But realistically, for the Marlins to be successful, Jacob Stallings needs to get going. And I think that's the hope right now. But I mean, the guy's never been good against breaking balls. He's usually been good against fastballs. He's not hitting fastballs now either. So it's a little scary. And I don't know what's happened to the defense, because it was great last year. Now it's all of a sudden not great. I don't know if he's not feeling right. I don't know what the deal is, but something's off with Jacob Stallings.
Well, with Trevor, I might try a Fortes start with him. He hasn't pitched a Fortes yet, but looking at his Jacob Stallings catcher's ERA with Trevor is 7.2, and with Peyton Henry, he had 3 games again with Peyton Henry as a backstop. He has a 1.69 ERA. So maybe that's
Peyton Henry.
Shout out Peyton Henry. So maybe that's condolences to him, his thumb surgery recently, but then maybe that's something they can try out if this one goes south as well.
Yeah, and another player who's had an injury and is now coming back for that, more than a month gone in the injured list and just finished a rehab assignment, Mr. Joey, what's his last name, Noah?
Forearms.
Joey Forearms. Eli, what can we expect now, Joey Wendell? Because last time he had an injury, he came back and was injured almost immediately. From Miami. Is this something that, if it happens again, is it to worry about from Joey? And what do we expect from Mr. Wendell or Mr. Forearms tonight?
Well, right. The forearms are a strength of his. The hamstring is a weakness of his. And this has been – it has held him back prior to this season. In previous years, he was on the IL also for a hamstring injury. And in this case, as you touched on, they brought him back almost like as soon as he was eligible to come back the first time from the IL. And that raised an eyebrow. I thought that was weird. I thought that couldn't possibly be right. And it was – frankly, kind of unsurprising that he may have aggravated it just so soon afterwards. But when he's healthy, people fell in love with this guy based on what we saw early in the season in April and early May. All the little things that he does right. I could pull up a GIF of his defense that I probably have lying around here somewhere. We haven't seen him play much second base this year, and that's all of a sudden going to be a pretty big part of his responsibilities right now with Jazz out of here. So he's at second base tonight, and I'm curious to see exactly how they split up that time between him and Birdie moving forward. He can play second base. He has the background to do so. And I mean, early in the year, what really stood out was his bat to ball skills. Like, he was near the top of the league in terms of contact rate early on. And even now, he's still high up there. This team has that in Miggy Rowe. And kind of outside of that, it's not a whole lot of guys that are really him and Nick Fortes. One reason why I love Nick Fortes, from what we've seen in the small sample, is that Fortes is also that type of hitter as well. But to have Wendell in there, at the very least, if not an everyday player, really close to being one, based on how this roster is comprised. And it's not a little premature to look ahead a month to the trade deadline with both Wendell. He has one more year of control after this year. BA has one more year of control after this year. Like, he's a good player that's going to get a little more expensive in arbitration next season. So we'll see how the team does overall, because if things take a big turn in the wrong direction for the Marlins as a whole, but Wendell is performing well, then naturally there are going to be some rumors swirling, because he fits with basically any roster that you could plug him in on.
I'd love to get deep into July without having to think about who we selling at the trade deadline. For once, please, can we win some games so I don't have to think about it?
I think we mentioned on Unfiltered, the best addition by subtraction would be just simply cutting your losses with Jesus Aguilar, and either having Nick Fortes get a lot of those DH starts. Garrett Cooper, he plays better when he's at first base rather than DHing. You have so many guys you can plug into the DH spot, and just like you mentioned earlier, him being in the 4 or 5 hole every single game, performing the way he is, it's just really
it's also just a very high-end offensive spot, right? So you look at WRC plus, and 100 is average, but for DH and first base, 110 is average. So he's another 10% below average from what you're getting there. So it hurts even more when it's one thing if your center fielder's not hitting and he's playing good defense, or even average defense, shortstop. But when your corner or DH masher supposed to be is not mashing, you're feeling it almost so, like, I wouldn't say twice as much, but another 10, 15, 20% more. And especially for a Marlins team that needs the offensive boost, it's a spot where you really got to make a tough decision. And I love Jesus Aguilar. I mean, he's a great guy, and he's a lot of fun to watch on the field, and he's had some nice stretches. And but at a certain point, between what you're already giving up at position like catcher, which I know offense isn't as important, but third base, they're not getting your typical third base production. We know the corner outfield spots aren't great. Like, they've got to find it somewhere, and that's the easiest place to find production. I mean, look at the Nationals, what they're getting out of Josh Bell right now. Like, you can get offensive production at the DH/first base spot relatively easily. And we just saw Carlos Santana get traded to from the Mariners. Or to the Mariners, excuse me.
To the Mariners,
that's a guy that isn't great right now, but hell, he'd be better. And they gave up nothing. You can go get a corner infielder if you really needed it, and for nothing, and get an upgrade there.
They shouldn't have traded Evan Edwards, man.
I don't think he's been doing. That's another one. Everyone's like, "Oh, Rays are going to turn him into a superstar." I don't think he's done anything.
This was in rookie ball. You're right. Now he has been pretty bad lately, but he was some first base depth. I liked him. That's he stayed, right? All right.
Just to shout out John Rodriguez. He traveled to DC for this series, and I think he's going to see multiple games from that. So he'll give us some in-person insight from there.
We should have credentialed him up.
I think the Nats would have cooperated with that.
I think now is a perfect time to get into our favorite time of the stream, series predictions. Prediction time. For those of you who may not know, and prediction time, we'll be discussing how many games the Marlins will take from the series, if any, and who your series MVP it will be. And yours truly is in second place. Eli just running away with it. Nostradamus. He has all the inside information. And all the way at the bottom, Noah.
Isaac's climbing up. There's
someone below me. There's still someone below me.
I put Lewis there.
Oh, it's Lewis.
I mean, Lewis
Oh, no.
did like 2 predictions.
And Brent isn't yet in the picture yet. He has 2 points, but doesn't crack the top 7. He's on the same leaderboard. If he makes a big jump, he'll be featured on
He'll
here
knock
too.
me out. I'll be below the title.
Right.
I think the best thing to do is start from the bottom and work our way up. Noah,
Not
your
nice.
predictions.
I'm going bold. I'm just going to go. They're going to take all 4. Marlins sweep the series, and I'll go with John Birdie. It's an easy go with. I'm going bold. I think that win against St. Louis is one of those. I've said this multiple times for multiple different things, and they haven't capitalized on them. This is one of those momentum swingers that you can really bounce off of. Hopefully they do it. If not, season's over.
Mm-hmm.
Eli,
I have a serious split.
Of course.
In this 4-game series between the Marlins and Nats. I was leaning towards the Marlins taking the series, but just a combination of little things. I don't feel they have the optimal roster construction, even with their injuries, and that's going to bite them in at least one close game in this series. So a series split. I will give the MVP to we'll stick with the Marlins, and I will go with
Don't say Billy Hamilton, bro.
just when I'm all out on Jesus Aguilar, I think he could pull me back in and have a big series. I'll go with Aggie as my series MVP.
all right. Brent,
Yeah, like Noah said, I thought that last win against St. Louis was really going to do us right. I think we're going to win 3. I think we're going to drop 1. That last one against the lefty, I think we continue to struggle against lefties. But I think Joey Wendell comes back, Mr. Form, no batting gloves, excited to watch him play. I'm picking him as my MVP.
oh, okay. Nice. Isaac,
I was gonna say series split, but I'm gonna be a little bit more optimistic. I'm gonna say they win 3 out of 4. I think they win the series, and I'm gonna. I don't want to say the same MVP as Noah. I'm trying to gain ground here as well. I'll go with Joey Wendell as well. I think Joey Wendell has a big series. He's homered off Gray, as we mentioned. He did homer off Gray earlier this year. And this is a good ballpark. I think he'll start at least 3 of the games. So I think it's a good one for him.
Joey Wendell has a home run off of Gray this year in Nats Park already.
I just said that.
You did? Is that literally what you just said?
Yes, thank you, Papa. Aram, go ahead.
go on.
Okay.
I was gonna actually say Wendell too, but I'll mix it up.
Yeah.
I think the Marlins take 3 out of 4. I actually think they lose today. I think
Yeah,
Gray's
same.
gonna shove. I think he's gonna shove. But I think they can take the next 3. They need to, obviously. I think they need to take 3 out of 4 at the very least. But I'm gonna go with Garrett Cooper. I think they need Coop. Coop's still swinging it well. 333 over his last dozen games. The guy's just kind of automatic at this point at the plate. It's been fun to watch. So I'll go Garrett Cooper as the MVP, and I say the Marlins take 3 out of 4. They lose 1 today, win the next 3.
And I'll do you one better. I say the Marlins score a run in the first inning. They manufacture a run in the first, and then Gray settles
run
down
first inning
and strikes out 10.
It's 10. Yeah, I think he might punch out 10.
Before I give my prediction, let me give Kevin's really quick. He said Marlins take 3 out of 4, and his MVP, Nick Fortes. He has Nick Fortes as the series MVP. I don't know. That's Kevin. But for me, I have Marlins taking 3 out of 4, and I don't have any reason to take Fortes. I'm gonna go with someone who has a big take. I'm gonna go with BA, Brian Anderson. Why not? That's my choice. I'm gonna go with BA. But before we go, Eli, do you need us to pose to take the pictures for Twitter?
Yeah, yes. There have been way too many recent streams where you guys are embarrassing yourself. And when it's a borderline case in terms of taking the pick, I'm always going to choose the one where I look good in it. Selfishly. But I think we probably got a moment right there.
All right.
I think that'll be good enough. Yeah.
Another one, great.
So that does it. It seems like everyone have the Marlins winning except Eli. Series split. Hopefully it doesn't happen.
Well, that's why Eli's winning. He just fades the Marlins.
Yeah, exactly.
For the most part, yeah. The only one recently.
It pays to be pessimistic.
I had pretty close to a perfect June, except for the Astros series that nobody could have saw coming. That was the one that they won.
Hey, I got it correct. I bet 2 out of 3. I think.
Isaac, do you have any bets for the Marlins before we get off the air?
Come on.
Actually, no, I did have some. I had a couple.
You said your feet.
The one
Avi
Yeah, you
Garcia
said
to
your beat.
homer.
Oh, what is he plus 10,000? I'll go pretty heavy on the over under on Trevor's strikeouts at 3.5. He's a strikeout
It's
guy.
at 3.5.
I got him going over for sure.
Take the
If
over.
I could bet on a dropped fly ball in center field, I would.
Right. And I would
Wow.
also do a run in the first inning bet as well. And then what was the other one I mentioned pre-show? It was I forgot, but the Trevor Rogers strikeouts I like. I think just size is at 5.5, and that's another one. These two teams strike out a lot, especially the Marlins. So any guy going up against Miami, I usually hit the over on K's.
I'm surprised we got through the whole stream without saying Happy Bobby Bonilla Day.
No, happy one, yeah.
All right. And with that, for Fish Stripes Live, I'm Daniel. For Isaac, for Noah, for Eli, for Brent, for Arm, for Kevin, who's not here. This is Fish Stripes Live. Stay tuned and always go fish.
We got to end it off right. We got to